and welcome to another minisode of the investigation game. This week I'm with Justin Burns, and he's going to tell us about one of his favorite cases ever. So Justin, before we start the timer, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Like I said, my name is Justin Burns. I work with Berman Hopkins, Wright and Laham CPAs. I'm a licensed CPA and certified fraud examiner. I work mainly on financial statement audits, as well as fraud and forensic engagements that our firm gets. I have an incredible wife who's about to begin her postdoc fellowship in clinical psychology. Unfortunately, whenever she was getting into psychology, I couldn't get her to go into forensics. So, clinical psychology it is.
Maybe later in life. Okay, so Justin, I am about to start our 15-minute timer, and then we're going to dive into your favorite case, okay? So starting the timer now, my first question is, tell us about your case. And just so our listeners know, Justin has changed the names and the locations of everybody in this case, so no worry about putting anybody out there.
I started working at this nonprofit fall semester of my master's year. I got brought on as full-time after I finished my master's program, and I still wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do in the accounting world. So I waited a little while before I started sitting for my CPA exams. So anyway, we're a small nonprofit, do about $6 million a year from a combination of state funding and grant funding. Did a lot of business development and workforce development, things like that, to boost the economy of our state. Most of this $6 million passed through to other entities. We're supposed to find, viable entities and companies to move this money onto. We were small. Our entire office consisted of 15 people, with just 2 of us in the accounting/finance department. It was just me, who had been an intern and then full-time staff member after that, and our CFO, Aaron. Now, in my position, I mainly worked on, internal financial reporting, tracking the budgets for these grants, or helping grant managers put together budgets to, for proposals for new grants. I would do a little bit of, entering time cards for payroll, entering bills for the AP process. We didn't outsource anything like payroll or any of that stuff. That was all in-house. And our CFO said, the stuff that's really going to get you the best experience is, the grant stuff, the budget tracking, that stuff. I'll take care of the boring day-to-day stuff. You just focus on the budgets and things like that. Like, it's pretty good. Sounds fun. And I was also guaranteed to just have a 40-hour week in a relaxed environment. Started there in November of 2010, and September of 2013, we had just switched to a new audit firm. And I know that our CFO, Erin, she had gotten to know the old auditors. She was friends with the partner there, because there'd been a long time relationship there, and she was upset about moving to this new audit firm.
Is that where things kind of started to unravel a little bit?
So the first week of September, our audit begins, and, it was a lot different than our last one. I'd been there for 2 previous audits, and they're both pretty easy. The firm that we were with would send like one person. We'd put them in an empty office, and they'd sit there for a week. They'd occasionally ask me to pull an invoice from a file, and that was it. They never really talked to me. They mainly just dealt with Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my experience with audit. To that point, I was like, all right, seems pretty relaxed, kind of strange. And then these new auditors took over, and there was 2 of them, and they were asking a lot of questions. They were really trying to get a handle on our processes. They were really trying to get a handle on just what we do, which is what they were supposed to be doing. They they were actually auditing, and it was nice. Because I'd never really been asked those questions before, and never really been exposed to somebody who was actually auditing us. We're in the second week. I had to like run an errand at lunchtime, so I go out to pick up something, and I was like, okay, I got to make this quick so I can get back because the auditors are gonna need something, I'm sure. And so I swung through Burger King because and I get back to the office and I take my food back to my desk. I sit down and I like take it out, and Erin comes by my office and she's like, they need to see you in the conference room. And I'm thinking the two auditors.
Yeah.
Like, can I just eat really quick and then I'll go in and talk to them? Usually I wouldn't keep them waiting, but Burger King's not good warm. It's especially bad when it gets cold. And I don't operate well when I don't eat. So I'm like, she's like, sure. Like she looks kind of flustered. I'm like, she comes back in and she's like, yeah, they said that's fine. She kind of started to cry a little bit. What's going on? She's like, they're going to talk to you about some stuff. I just want you to know that, yeah, I did it, but I didn't take as much as they said I took.
Oh gosh.
What now? She just said like, yeah, go ahead, finish your lunch and then go talk to them. I'm like, and then like somebody that I didn't know like kind of came behind her, like she's like standing in my office and like he's like, hey, like come with me, and like grabs Erin and they head off like back towards her office. So I go in the conference room and there's like 6 people I've never seen before, all in suits. I'm like, oh, this was not just a couple of auditors that I held up while I scarfed down a cheap burger. Like, oh no, what have I done? And I'm pretty sure one of them said something like, would you have a good lunch?
Oh my gosh. Like you were gonna know what you were walking into.
I'm like, well, no, honestly, no, I didn't, because hey, Burger, of course I didn't have a good lunch. I never regretted that decision. Turns out it's some lawyers, FBI agents, because again, we had grant funding from the federal government, so FBI agents, a couple people from our accounting firm, one of them being the partner over our audit engagement. The partner comes in and he was super nice about this whole thing, really great in what he knew was a tense situation. He just kind of sat me down and they're like, okay, this is what happened. She's been stealing money.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know exactly how much. We don't know exactly how. We don't know how long it's been going on for. But by the time you leave this room with us, she's going to be out of the building. And you guys do everything in-house. Like I said, like we didn't outsource any payroll or AP or anything like that. Like, so we need to know right now, what do you know how to do and what do you not know how to do to be able to keep you guys running on a day-to-day basis. I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
I don't know how to actually cut paychecks. She was cutting these checks to herself. She didn't want that to be my responsibility to possibly see these things.
It's a lot to toss in somebody fresh out of college.
So, he kind of gives me this rundown. He's like, we know you didn't have anything to do with it, but tomorrow you're going to go up to the FBI offices here. And he's like, you're going to sit down and you're going to talk with them. And Tom, who's the CEO, he's going to go with you. And Anna, who works the front desk and opens the mail, like she's going to go too. So you 3 are going to go up there and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day we go up to the FBI offices. I talk to them for 2 hours. We have the lawyer for our company is in there with us, who he had actually been a former FBI agent and prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And he comes in there with us. And we're like, look, we know he didn't have anything to do with this. We're just talking to get information on like things he might have seen, things like that. So we talked for 2 hours, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to have you help with some of the evidence gathering because, apparently her office had like a lot of file cabinets, just jammed with papers. We think maybe she had some stuff in there. So we want you to, go through, find anything that you can that might be interesting. Okay, cool. So I got to help in the case.
Yeah. So while you were helping with the case, what were the methods that she was using to steal money that you found?
So she would cut checks directly to herself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of interesting. She wouldn't just cut a check to herself without any supporting documentation behind it. She would fill out an expense report and attach not a receipt, but a shopping cart that she printed out from either her favorite one seemed to be like CPE websites for her CPA license.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she'd be like, "Oh, I'm doing this online CPE course. It's going to cost this much." She'd have the shopping cart for it, do an expense report for it, but she never actually purchased it. And she would cut an expense report check to herself. And that way she could have that expense report just laying around in case somebody asked for it. She could pull it out and say like, "Oh, this is what I bought." Which we went back and looked at it, and if she actually did all the CPE that she billed for, she would have done like 1,000 hours of CPE or something like that when you only need like 40 a year.
Oh my gosh.
Another, and this one was a biggie. We had company American Express cards for the project managers, and she had access to like an admin one if she needed to buy supplies or something like that, or she had access to that. But then she took out another American Express card under the company's name and had the bills sent to her house instead of to our company. And she would just pay off all of the manager's credit cards for the company in like one big lump transfer to Amex and include her what became a personal one in there. And I found these credit card statements for this one. And I'm like, this card number doesn't make any sense. Like the address is for her house, but whenever I add up the card for, let's say like August, this amount's definitely in there. The amount that we paid on the bank statements is in there. And she used this thing for strictly personal use. I mean, she took her family on a Disney cruise on this card, and the company paid for it.
Oh my gosh.
And then she would double dip. She would buy something on that credit card, claim it was a business expense, do an expense report on it, and get reimbursed for it. But then also she wasn't paying the credit card bill for that one, so she would just double dip for it and claim it was, like, oh, she went to Walmart for supplies that she bought for the company. But when you go back and look at it, the charge was, this is a real one. The charge was the day before Thanksgiving, she apparently went to Walmart and bought a bunch of supplies.
Oh. Jeez.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
what was the end result of this investigation?
So our audit firm, we had to do a forensic engagement with them. They only looked at 3 years. And then I looked into it for as far back as I could go with it and find records for. It ended up being 7 years worth of theft, which if you look at it, she started stealing money at the same time that the old audit firm started auditing us. So we suspected that there were a tie-in there.
Mm-hmm.
She'd maxed out our $400,000 line of credit. She had drawn some of our grant money down early.
Wow.
So this was grant funding that was spoken for by other organizations that we had to fund from somewhere else. Looking at the victim impact statement that we did, it ended up being around $850,000 over the course of 7 years. and I think she pled guilty to around like 630, because there was some items that, in our reports it was, this is definitely fraud. These are maybe charges. We couldn't get an itemized receipt for it, but maybe this Walmart charge is legit. You bought supplies. Maybe it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So we could have sat there in court and argued over those maybe charges to get another 220 grand tacked onto it, but she ended up just pleading guilty to the 630 that
Mm-hmm.
we knew for sure.
Jeez. So what ended up happening with the organization that she was working for?
We had to pull out a bunch of tricks just to kind of survive.
Yeah.
It maxed out our line of credit, pulled some grant money. Our CEO, Tom, he stepped up and decided, like that December, he said, don't pay me my salary, which was big because he had 2 kids under the age of 5, and we're talking about in December around Christmas time, and he's like, we need to make sure everybody else in the building is getting paid. I
Mm-hmm.
could go without it for a month. Yeah, it was really tight there. We were able to move to another bank and get a small line of credit from them to kind of help us make it to our next year when
Mm-hmm.
our new grants and new state allocation funding would kick in. But I checked in with Tom for the research for doing this podcast. He sent me a bunch of documents from the case, forensic audit report, things like that. Company's still going strong. They're doing well. They've recovered from this. They got lucky and made it. I stuck around for a couple years, finished up my exams, moved into the controller position, tore down our system of internal controls because they apparently weren't working, and rebuilt them back up. She got sentenced to 1 year, which I think she ended up doing 3 months in like a minimum security prison, 3 months in a halfway house, and the remaining 6 months from home arrest.
Wow.
She's paying restitution, having her paychecks garnished. She got a job through some people she went to church with, and talking to Tom, he said she should make full restitution sometime in like 40 years or something like that. So
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, she did take a lot of money. I mean, it's so great to know that they're still in business and they're still doing well, and it worked out so well for them, but jeez.
massive amount of loss.
Yeah.
This was somebody that they trusted. We were part of the state's budget, so every year whenever the state came out with their new budget, we had to look and see like, okay, how much did we get? And there was 1 year that funding got cut by like 1.5 to just $500,000. So we lost $1 million, and so we had to redo our internal budgets. Looking towards next year, we had to cut some people, and I remember being super upset that people were having to get cut. She was friends with these people, and they were losing their jobs. And then looking at it, she stole more that next year than she did the year before that. But she was the one raising such a stink about having to cut, these people who she cared about. But, if the previous year she stole 150 grand, the year after our funding got cut, she stole 180.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
So, this case was in such an early point of your career. How do you feel it shaped the way you decided to carry on with the rest of your career moving forward?
got my master's in accounting, and I was still just like, I don't really know what I want to do in the accounting industry, because I'm at this old nonprofit, which the theme for my position was they'd get somebody in college, bring them on full time. They'd eventually get their CPA license. Then they couldn't afford to hold on to them. There was really no room for advancement. And then that person would just leave, and they'd get another person in that spot. So I knew my career wasn't going to stay there. after I was done. And I was kind of panicking because I'm like, I've gone through a lot of education and student loans to get to this point, and I still don't know if I even want to be in this industry. And then this fraud happened, and I'm like, oh, I do want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what I want to do. One particular moment where it just kind of clicked for me. I was tearing through stuff in Aaron's office. I'd had the door closed. I'd been in there for like a week. There's papers everywhere. It's like a bomb had gone off. And I think this was when I found the credit card. And I call the CEO. I'm like, Tom, you got to come look at this. Like, I found something big. Like, you got to come look at this. And he comes into her office, and I'm, telling him, look what I found. She did this. She took her family, that Disney cruise she took. It's all on here. We ended up paying for it. And I'm talking 1,000 miles an hour. And then I look over at him, and like, he's just staring at one of her family photos that's still on the wall. Like, he's not listening to anything I'm saying right now. And he just says, her daughters were the flower girls at my wedding. He completely trusted this woman. They'd worked together for 10 years, and he just felt terrible. He knew the company that he worked for and loved for, over a decade was potentially all going to collapse.
Yeah.
He knew that he'd been betrayed by it, and I just saw how he felt in that moment, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to help people who are feeling like him right now, and I want to keep people from having to feel like that. This is why I need to be in accounting. This is what I want to do.
That's a beautiful result to a crazy and terrible fraud story.
I was lucky to kind of have that light bulb moment in the middle of what was absolutely a tragedy. I mean, there was definitely times where we're like, I don't think we're going to make it. Like, we're all going to lose our jobs. We're going to have to shut our doors. We're not going to make it.
It's so rare that we get to hear the end result to a fraud story. And it's so beautiful that the company got back on its feet and you were able to help them out, and it shaped to what you are now. I think that is so amazing.
The company survived. A lot of the people that I worked with then are still there. They still have jobs. They're still helping the community in the goal of this nonprofit. And they're doing some really great work. It was dark for a little while, but it ended up well.
I'm glad. Well, Justin, thank you so much for being on our episode.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. If you enjoyed this week's minisode and want to learn more about the story, visit our blog page on our Workman Forensics site, where Justin Burns has written the full story, plus a few extra details, minus all the thunder. The investigation game is brought to you by Workman Forensics. For more information on the business and its services, visit workmanforensics.com. Find us on social media on any social media platform at Workman Forensics. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or topic ideas, please email us at podcast@workmanforensics.com. Thanks for listening.